So hello, welcome. My name is John. I'm an e-specialist here with the library, and today we're going to be talking about web design for small businesses and side hustles. Now, real quick, what is a side hustle? If you are someone who has a full-time job and then on the side you are making jewelry or hats or whatever, that would be your side hustle. And today's class is about making a website for that kind of thing. Everything we're going to be aiming at today is either free or very low cost to make it much easier for you to purchase, really. There are much more expensive options than the ones we're talking about today, but for obvious reasons, we're not going to cover those. So I'm going to, real quick, get this PowerPoint going, and then we can dive in. At any given point in time, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. I will have the chat window open, and my colleague Randy is also on the line. So if at any point I miss a question, he might be answering for me, but I'll try to keep an eye out. What are we going to be covering today? We're going to cover why you need a website, what kind of website is best for you, because while we say the word website and we think, okay, there is one monolithic website, in actuality, there are a lot of different kinds of sites out there, and you want to make sure to pick the one that's best for you. What do you need to get started, which is always a good place to start. And then we're going to talk about some online website building tools, and we're actually going to go live for some of those just so that you can get a feel of what's going on. Now, the good news for all of this, you need to know very little, if no, coding. You can do this all drag and drop. So you just grab a box, put it into place, and you're good to go. So building a website, at least for today, requires no coding experience. Now, if you know how to code, this will be a help. This will let you do more with your site than someone who doesn't. But yeah, you can definitely do all of this without coding. And yes, I will be sending you the presentation along with a PDF of the presentation in case it doesn't open if you have PowerPoint or something like that. Why do you need a website? Well, for one thing, everybody these days seems to have one, and more people are taking their business online. This is especially important these days, thanks to, well, the big boogeyman COVID. It's really hard for people to go into a small business. It's much easier to put your small business on the internet and have people come to you than trying to have some kind of brick and mortar place. Now, that being said, if you do have a brick and mortar business, this is a way of funneling more traffic to you as well. Now, when I say it's easier to get people to come to you, you will have to do marketing still too. You also want to make sure that when you're building your website, it is understandable not only to you, but to other people. Because if you have a website and you think it looks just absolutely gorgeous, and I go to it and I can't read it because of the way you've done your font or your background colors or whatever, even if the content is great, I still am not going to want to purchase from you. I'm going to go to your competitor. So you do want to make sure that you are working on your website and being creative, but not overly so. So what kind of website is good for you? And like I said, there are a lot of different kinds. There's blogs. There's just a standard kind of baseline content site. If you go look at, let's say, a dozen different gyms, you'll see that a lot of them have the same kind of appearance. That's because just like in books and movies, websites fall into genres. So what you would do is find your industry, your niche, see what other people are doing on their websites and kind of navigate towards that. You can still stand out, but If you're selling, let's say, handcrafted masks, you don't want to have a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with masks on there. If it's all puppies, people will think you're making masks for puppies. So what are you trying to do with the business? That's the first step. And then let's look at some examples out there. So here is a very basic information website. This is going to be something like you're selling hamburgers or some kind of cooking. Here we can see that we have the ability to check out the home page, and I'm referring to this image here. It's a little hard to see, I know, but they have the home, about, menus, gallery, reservations, and contact. Which items you have there is going to be up to you. If you're something like this where it's a pizza place or a burger place, you're definitely going to want to have more information on how they can get a hold of you. And feel free, if you've got a physical location, to have that information because you want them to come to you. Now, if what you want to do is you want to be a wedding photographer or just a photographer in general, then you need to structure your website to be more photo forward, where yes, you're going to have content like who you are, how can they reach you, what are your thoughts on photography, stuff like that. But those sorts of things are going to be pushed to the side. They might be off the front page, and the front page is where you're going to be showing off your art, your photos, your whatever, because you want people to hire you. And if they don't know your work product, they're less likely to hire you. So a portfolio is definitely a good kind of website to have out there. Online store. Now, before I go too much into how awesome online stores can be, I do want to tell you that a lot of the options we're going to be talking about today have built into them the option for a store. So you can be building your blog or your portfolio or whatever website you're building, and at the same time building a store that, as far as the customer is concerned, is your same website on what we call the back end, where you as the developer are working. They are two separate entities that you have linked through whatever platform you're using. Having a store of your own, especially if you're someone making jewelry or masks or whatever, is always a good thing to have. But I do want you to remember places like Etsy. That is also a good place to sell your wares because people know about Etsy. In fact, what you can do with something like that is sell 2 or 3 items on Etsy and then sell the rest on your online store. And so you can funnel people from Etsy into your own store. Just really depends on what you're trying to do. So what do you need to get started? Well, good question. You need a domain name. Now, here's the problem with domain names. The internet has been around for 30 years. And because of that, there are domain names that you can no longer get because someone else has them. There are websites that will tell you, hey, so-and-so has this website and they're willing to sell it to you for $2,000. You might be able to get the domain you want in that case. So what you might have to do is fiddle around, especially if you have a common name, Jen's Desserts. That's probably more common than you think. So someone else might have already gotten that domain. Depending on how creative you are, you can honestly get a good domain for about $7 a year. It really just depends. It'll depend on your host platform or however. But yeah, you can pay once a year and you have a domain and you can use that. Once you've got your domain, you also need your content, something to put at that domain location. This is also, if you're using something like WordPress or Wix, they need to know your domain so they can put the content there. Contact information is only important if they need to get in contact with you. If you're doing something like a blog and they never really need to contact you, you're just reading, that's an option. I will say this, I don't know all the places to get a domain name. I personally got mine through a hosting service called DreamHost. So, and to be perfectly honest, my wife handles some of it because she had it to begin with. So you might want to check into various options. We're a little less focused on the domain side of the equation and more on the website, because even if you didn't have a custom domain, you can still have a website. It'll just be, let's say, wordpress.com/Jen's Bakery. Written descriptions you're going to want to have if that is something that you need. Like I said, it's really going to depend on what you're doing. Honestly, where written descriptions really is important is in the digital photos. Whenever you put a photo on the internet, you have to understand that there is at least one person. There's more than that, but there's at least one person who is blind using the internet. For that one person, for all of those people, whenever you put a photo on your website, you need to make sure that you add what is called alt text or alternative text, so that if the person cannot see the photo, their system will tell them whatever is in the alt text. So that's what that written description is the most important in my mind, is making sure you describe the picture that you've put in there. Now, how much will it cost? Well, it really depends on the service. There are platforms that are 100% free. There are ones that cost a lot more. WordPress just came out with a professional level website creation platform they'll do all the work for you, and it starts at $5,000. Now, you're not going to want to do that. Usually what we're looking at is between $0 and about $50 a month. Just depends on the service and what other extras you want to put in there. The big thing that you usually are paying to get rid of is ads, so that you don't have to see ads for things you don't want on your website. And online stores are the most expensive option. And the reason why they're the most expensive option is an online store is not just a storefront. There is all of the back end stuff that you have to handle. And by you, I mean the hosting company. They've got to manage things like how many do you have left, where are these things going, all of this extra stuff. And in handling that, they're taking up more costs, and so they're passing those costs on to you. It's also why I say this last bit here, you might want to start with something like Etsy and then work your way to your own online store. Let's look at some options for services out there. And after we look at some of these, we'll go live. So WordPress, I've mentioned it a couple of times, and it is one of the more popular services out there. Now, WordPress comes in two flavors, chocolate and vanilla. No, really what it is WordPress.com and WordPress.org. Most of what we'll focus on is the .com side of things. .org is more for developers who are building their own themes and really going in depth to WordPress so that they are building the themes that .com users will be using. This is one version of WordPress. There are a lot of out there, and you can change the look of this. Yes, GoDaddy is a good place to at least find a domain if you want one. WordPress is good for blogs. It's also good for just a website. DreamHost, like I said, what I personally use, what they have is they have the WordPress themes, but they also have an external company that works with them, BoldGrid, to make even more amazing looking websites. And you can use the BoldGrid platform inside of WordPress to really take your website to the next level. And you can have, in their themes, they show you exercise places, restaurants, all sorts of things, all built in WordPress, and all very easy to edit with a little know-how. One of the reasons I like WordPress, aside from the fact that I'm paying for it, the domain and using it that way, is that I can update my website, post new content from my phone, because there's a WordPress app. There's also one for some of the other ones as well, but WordPress is what I use. Prices range from free to $45 a month. That number is always fluctuating, and depending on when you start your website, you might be able to get a lower price for more content because they might be having a sale. So just think about that too. Squarespace is another big name in the environment. If you listen to podcasts, you might even hear ads for Squarespace where if you give a promo code from their podcast, you can get money off on your Squarespace site. Problem is there are no free options when it comes to Squarespace, so you can't really put your feet in the water for free and then go on from there. You're starting running. Your prices are about 12 to 40 a month. Again, promo codes can lower that, sales can lower that. So always be aware of those sorts of things. They do have very high quality templates that you can then go in and edit. But again, you're going to be doing that editing having not been able to play with the free version. And the editor is not as intuitive. In fact, WordPress just came out with a whole new editing platform called Gutenberg within the last 6 months to a year. And it makes it even less code-like, and it's much more drag and drop than it was before. Squarespace has some of that, but they're doing slightly different things. Wix, if you watch TV, everyone's probably heard of Wix these days. It's another good web platform. I will say this about Wix. It is incredibly easy to build a website in there. I've helped people build Wix websites, so I do know what I'm talking about with that. The big thing is understand and this is really true for any of these, understand the limitations of the product and don't try to force your overall wants onto the theme. If you choose a theme because it looks pretty, but it doesn't work for your website on any level other than what it looks like, then maybe that's not the right platform for you or the right theme. But you can get extraordinarily complex. And what's great about this is all of this complexity that any of these have, you can make a great looking website and you've never coded a single line. So that's why I like any of these. And Wix, you can go from free to $49 a month, plus stores and everything. So there's a lot of functionality in Wix as well. Weebly, I haven't really played with all that much, but it's a good drag and drop builder. It's really going to depend on how you're hosting is which one of these you're going to use. There's not as much customization. Again, by lowering the customization options, they make the theme more stable and less likely to break. And then you get free to 26 a month. And you can even put it in a store if you want. Google Sites. Now, this is the one that has the least amount of options, but it's also free. If any of you have a Gmail account, congratulations, you have a Google Sites account and you can build your own sites through it. And I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes here. And when I say it's easy to use, it is very easy to use. It's drag and drop. It's pretty much the easiest. The thing is, you're going to be making a very simple website through this and not as many bells and whistles as you would expect from some of the other systems. So before we worry about thanking you, but I do thank you for being here, let's go online. Are there any questions so far? And if you have a question as I'm talking, feel free to type it in. So here we are at Google. I'm already signed into my Google account. Now, what I find a little irritating is that I can't go to my waffle over here and just see an option for sites. I can, good questions. Let's go in the order I've saw these. Do you as the user own your website or does Google own it? You own the content, Google owns the framework. If you use the Google builder, they don't have to go through Google. What they would do is go through whatever domain you gave them. If you gave them jensbakery.com, they would go to that web address and they would never really know that you were in Google unless you told them. Okay, what do you have to have? Domain name, Yes, it's a little bit more optional because some of the systems I'll show you here in a little bit will give you most of the domain name, and then you can just add on your bit. If you want a custom domain name, then that's when you're going to have to go out and find one and buy it. Now, before I'm going to put a pin in that domain name for a moment and move to hosting. Host, like I said, I use DreamHost. My wife has used it for a bit, and I'm just kind of adding to her system. But they can start at $249 a month for hosting, and then through there you might also and then there's your .com domain names for $6.99 a year. So really what ends up happening is it together might end up being $10 a month, $30 a month. I don't know. It depends on what your options are going to be. But the host is what you put your website on. Some hosts, like DreamHost, let you build the website from within it. Others are going to require you to build the website somewhere else, usually on your computer, and then load it onto the host platform. And it just really depends on your host. Now, getting to Google Sites, you can always, do you have to have a host? That's a more complicated one. So I'm going to give you two answers. Yes and no. A host is the company that physically stores your website and allows other people to access the website. Most people do not have the technical skills necessary to be their own host, nor do they have the money to handle the bandwidth of being your own host. So that's your yes, you need a host. No, you can be your own host. You just need to know how to run a server, have internet capable of handling the traffic coming to your website, and be able to monitor that 24/7. Most people don't have that, and so they use hosts instead. It's really going to be up to you. I know there are a lot of people, though, that host their own websites because they have the skills and the finances for it. So there's a couple of ways you can access your sites. One way is you just go Google Sites. And then there's your Google Sites sign in, and I'm already signed in, so we're good to go. And here's a site I have built already. But notice that up top here in our template gallery, we have a fair number of sites to choose from. So you can go with blank, and it'll real quick build some stuff. And now we can start dragging and dropping content. So if I like this layout over here on my right, I'll just drag it into location. I might want it a different size. Oh, I just cloned it. And so I might come in here, play with things, move this. I can edit text and change my font to whatever I want, just like you would expect from a platform. Let's say Pacifico. Now, a lot of these services, Google, but DreamHost, Wix, WordPress, a lot of these use Google fonts to handle all the fonts. So if you are not seeing a font, it's probably because it's not in Google Fonts or not made available for your website through Google Fonts. So that's why you see a lot of websites have the same looking fonts, because they're all pulling from the same location. I'm going to add a picture. Let's see, select image. I apparently let me just go by Google image search, and I'm going to search for hello. Perfect. I'll use this one. So I click on the image I want, hit insert, and it inserts the image. And I can edit that image to make it fit the content or the slide location better. Put it wherever I want. Now, the really important thing is that alt text I mentioned. So getting to the alt text is different for every system. Here in Google, you can click on the image, then these three dots, and then you can add your alt text and then put a description in there. A smiling sun with sunglasses. Apply. And now, if the website breaks or anything, this image won't be there, but someone will still be able to see it. Okay. Yes, let me, I'm seeing some more questions. Are these images free or copywritten? The images that I just did through Google, I don't know. As a rule, they use the Creative Commons, but honestly, what you want to make sure, any picture you use on your website, you have gotten from some online platform that will say you don't owe us any money for this picture, or it's a picture you have taken. That way you don't have to worry about any copywriting. Now, are you able to add your own logo? Yes, it will depend on the template and everything you use to how they do that. Let me go to this one that I've made still in Google. And here's that mobile lab. And I put in a custom logo that I created. So you can absolutely add your own logo. It'll just really depend on what your theme is as to how you can place it and where it's going to go. So you might not be able to get exactly, but you can get pretty close. Good question. So the question on the floor is, would Google Sites also be accessible in Google Docs so others on my team could make edits to the website? Let me come out of here and go to Drive. So they wouldn't be able to do it through Google Docs, but if you could give them access to your Google Drive, then we can see here that there are files that they can open with Google Sites. And now we're in the editing area and they can edit and add content as you want. Now, does Google host or do I still need a separate host? It looks like Google does host it, but I don't quite know what their hosting limits are. Honestly, this is a good platform just to get your feet wet, to see if you like drag and drop and all that stuff at all. But if you are making this if you're going into business, I would not use Google Sites. It's just a good free thing. If I was going to use something, let me switch. So I would use WordPress.com. So here we are on a WordPress website that I made for these kinds of classes. And what's nice about it is that you can really quickly edit anything on here. Now, this is being hosted by WordPress. How do I know? Because I can see in the address up here, it says mobileteachinglab.wordpress.com. So I am getting some free hosting for this website. I don't need to worry about anything. And if I had my own domain, I could have put it there instead of using their WordPress.com. So it's what was I willing to pay for? And I was just kind of tinkering at this point. Speaking of tinkering, here is what this website looks like if I wanted to edit anything. So I can come in with site identity and start playing with things. I can put in a logo, anything I wanted. Now, something I've learned about this is if I put the logo in, it's going to remove the name of the website. So what you might want to do is make sure your logo is not just an image of like the library Sunburst, it also has the name of your website there too. There are a lot of different things you can edit in here, and these are largely drag and drop or edit from the editor here. And then here is the back end for WordPress.com. WordPress, more paid, looks similar to this. It's just there are more options in the paid version, really. This is a website that I made and I'm updating, and that irritates me. And this is being hosted by DreamHost, but it's using a custom domain that I made. So made and purchased. So there are always options out there. It just really depends on what you're willing to pay. Any other questions? I will say with Wix, WordPress, all of these places, if you have a team, you can give your whole team access to the site and they can edit parts of it from their phone. You can allow them really whatever access you want. So some more questions. WordPress has the ability to host. Yes, I'm doing it right now. So I just went to WordPress.com and let me do that again in a new private window so that I'm not getting all the content that I was. So you can get products. So now remember, you're wanting to go WordPress.com for the free hosting. See, WordPress.com gives you everything you need to create your website today. Free hosting, your own domain, a world-class support team, and at all. So you can make a free website here. What you have, a free website and have a domain along with hosting and all the other stuff. Your plans and pricing start denoting things like how much traffic you get. So let's say the $4 hosting, you get a free domain for a year, you remove all ads, you get rid of payments and stuff like that. And as you pay more per month, you get more bells and whistles. If you go with another domain, another hosting service, they're going to have different options available to you. I will say that this premium, if I really was really concerned about it, this right here, the Google Analytics integration, that is probably where I would start making my choices, because, and there's a whole other class on Google Analytics, so we're not going to get too deep in that, but Google Analytics is what you use to keep track of who's coming to your website and what they're doing. PayPal account question, I do not know. It's really going to depend on what the hosting plan allows. Do I help anyone personally on one-on-one to start setting up the website? Right now, we do not do any one-on-one appointments. In the past, I have as part of our one-on-ones, but right now, no. Our tutorials within WordPress. There are tutorials, I believe, in WordPress, but if there aren't, you can always go to the library and then There we go. Always go to the library and go to digital library. And way down here is lynda.com. And lynda.com has a lot of videos on a lot of things. You need to go through this link, meaning through the library, because if you Google lynda.com directly, then it will take you to a paid version. So you put in your library card number and your PIN, and you're good to go. And there are tons of videos in there on Google, on WordPress. HostGator, GoDaddy, both good. They work. Really what I would say is that if you want to sell jewelry and other kinds of things, I would make a site with many pages. So let's go to the library, because it makes more sense when I'm on the library. So here is the Jacksonville Public Library's website. Now, within the website, there are a lot of different areas. So if I was to go to events and classes, computer classes, this is a different page on the library's website. So look into your plan, your free plan, your paid plan, whatever plan you're using to see what is possible. But what you can do is have this centralized website called X. And then in X, you have pages for your jewelry or other sites going on. And from the customer standpoint, it'll all look like one overarching thing. From your standpoint, there are a whole bunch of sub locations that you have access to. Yeah, the questions really have made it longer, but that's good. So we are at 46 minutes after the hours, so I'm gonna call it there. Thank you all for coming. If you have any more questions, here, let me switch to that particular slide. Come on. There we go. If you have any more questions, email us at jple-services@coj.net. The same email address that you were sent the link, send us an email from that to that address, and we'll try to answer whatever questions you have and get you into the right locations. Thank you all for coming in today. You've been a great group. Have a good day. Have a good rest of your week, and I hope 2021 treats you well.